You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we have UFC 275 Teixeira versus Prohaska, preview, predictions, and analysis. UFC 275 takes place this Saturday, June 11th, from the indoor stadium in Kallang, Singapore. The first ever UFC event to ever take place in Singapore is going down this Saturday night. And in the main event of the evening, you have a battle for the UFC's light heavyweight championship. In a highly anticipated fight between the newly crowned UFC light heavyweight champion and mixed martial arts veteran in Glover Teixeira, who comes into the fight with a record of 33 victories and 7 defeats, going up against the number 2 ranked finisher in Yuri Denisa or BJP Prohaska, who comes in with a record of 28 victories, 3 defeats, and 1 draw, with 25 victories coming by way of knockout. Somebody's going down in the main event, and there is no chance that it goes the distance. So let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? We got UFC 275 preview and predictions. Before that, we'll touch quickly on last week's UFC Fight Night or UFC Vegas 56. Overall picks, I did pretty good. I think on the podcast predictions, I went 5-2. Obviously, the main event again, At this rate, I don't know what I'm going to do about those main events. I should have picked Volkov. My gut was telling me Volkov, but I didn't trust his chin, but he didn't even have to rely on his chin. He did a little bit when him and why can I not think of his name? When him and Jairzinho slugged it out a bit in the first round, but end up catching Jairzinho with a right hand, stumbling him, hurting him against the cage, dropping him. He gets back up, he drops him again, and the ref stops it. I know a lot of people didn't like the stoppage. They thought that it was too early. They thought they didn't give him enough chance to fight. And, I honestly don't think that it was a bad stoppage at all. I really don't. There's nothing about that makes me scream the fight should have continued. His mouthpiece went out. He got dropped. He got back up. He went down again. So, it is what it is. But again, main event picks not doing too well for me lately. Overall on bets for last week, I did good. We finally came up on a winning effort. I had 3 bets that didn't cash. I had a bet on Daniel Argueta to win. I did bet on him to win by decision. Huge underdog. I thought he was going to be able to push the pace, use his wrestling, and use his pressure. Turns out he got out-grappled for a lot of it, but at the end of the second round, he was coming on strong, hurting Damon Jackson. Got a takedown in the third and then just got reversed and, again, out-positioned by the veteran in Damon Jackson. He loses the fight via decision, but he does get a UFC contract. I'm sure I'll be backing Argueta again in the future, depending on when his next fight gets announced. We had a 3-leg parlay which hit for us, which was Jeff Molina, Movsar Evloev, and Joe Selecki. That one cashed for us. I think the odds were like plus 500 or plus 400, something like that. Nothing crazy. And then we had 2 live bets, which I ended up throwing down. I wasn't even watching the fights. I was at work, but I bet on Ode Osborne to win in the first round against Saruk Adashev. That was not a pick. That was on the podcast. The odds were at plus 400. It was too juicy to pass up. And what do you know? It ends in under a minute in the first round via knockout. So cash that plus 400 on Ode Osborne in the first round. And then also I rocked a bet on Alonzo Menfield to defeat Askar Morazov or Mazarov. He had a few different names if you know the whole story behind that. But I put a bet on him to win by KO TKO. I was valued at plus 110. Boom, hit that one as well. So decent night for us. I think we ended up a little bit over double what we put in and a little bit more. So good night for us. Finally, we're off the stinker when it comes to the bets. We're done getting screwed by the judges. And hopefully we can continue the streak this upcoming weekend at UFC 275. Fantastic card. I mean, Teixeira versus Prohaska, Glover versus Yuri is a fantastic fight and an amazing title fight for the main event. No way it goes. Oh, I don't even want to say it because every time somebody says it, it ends up, we end up jinxing it. But someone's getting finished in this fight. I mean, it's going to go one way or the other, either and new or and still, but somebody's getting finished. You got Glover Teixeira, who's got, I believe, some of the most finishes in UFC history, or some of the most finishes in light heavyweight history. And you got Prohaska 28-3 with 25 wins coming by way of knockout. So, I think it's 25 knockouts, 2 submissions, and 1 decision. So the guy's a finisher. He comes in to put it all on the line, whether it's him putting himself in the fire or him getting taken out on the way to get to the fire. He's always getting hurt, but he comes forward and he finds a way to win. He's a madman. He's the closest thing we've ever had to a traditional samurai in mixed martial arts. And if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, I just did a video on Yuri Prohaska recently. But you got this fight. You got Taila Santos versus the reigning defending UFC women's flyweight champion and Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko. I believe this is one of the most interesting challengers that Valentina Shevchenko can have, and I think it's definitely her toughest matchup when it comes to that flyweight division and defending that title. Not to say I don't think she's going to win. We'll talk about that when we get to that prediction, but Santos 19-1, Valentina I believe is 22-3 as a professional mixed martial artist. And then in the featured bout of the evening, you have the rematch of one of the best, if not the best, I believe it's the best women's MMA fight of all time, and definitely the best women's MMA title fight, in the rematch between the former reigning defending strawweight champion and strawweight queen in the Boogie Woman, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, returning to the octagon after her last fight with this individual, going up against the former strawweight champion again. Both 2 former strawweight champions, 2 former strawweight queens in the 21-3 Magnum Zhang Weili. So Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk 2, this time in a 3-round fight, not a 5-rounder like their first fight at UFC 248. Fantastic fight. I don't expect it to be as good as the first one. I don't mean to be a downer, but I do think we're going to get a fantastic fight there. And it's a close matchup, man. I just watched the first fight again from start to finish last night, and it's going to be interesting to break down that fight when we get to it. But yeah, great fights overall. And we're going to start it off with one prelim in the welterweight division. You've got Andre Fialgo competing for, I believe, the 3rd time in the last month and a half. He's going for the middleweight version of Khamzat Chimaev, or I'm sorry, the welterweight version of Khamzat Chimaev. I guess Khamzat 2.0. The reincarnation of the original Fight Island Khamzat is what Andre Fialgo is, coming in here, fight after fight after fight, turnaround after turnaround after turnaround. And he's going up against the UFC veteran and one of the youngest UFC debutants when he made his debut in the UFC. I believe he debuted at 19 years old, in the Celtic Kid Jake Matthews, who comes into the fight with a record of 17-5. If I didn't mention Fialgo's record, he comes back with a record of 16 victories and 4 defeats, with 13 victories coming by way of knockout. I like this fight a lot. I think it's a really good fight. I think that it's closer than people think, but I also believe that people are on to, well, what a lot of people are saying and what a lot of people believe is also what I believe will happen in this fight as well. And we'll get to it when we get there. But Fialgo obviously trains under Henry Hooft out at Sanford MMA. He works alongside Brendan Allen. I believe Rafael Fiziev has worked out there before. Just the you name them, they work out at Sanford MMA. It's one of the best MMA gyms in the world. And the one thing that his coach in Henry Hooft says is keep it simple, stupid. KISS. And, I think Fialgo is a very good representation of that. A lot of jabs, a lot of crosses, a lot of hooks, a lot of uppercuts, and a lot of low kicks. That's Fialgo's game. He is a Thai boxer. He is not a Muay Thai striker. He is a boxer that uses low kicks. So in my opinion, he is a technical brawler / boxer brawler. That's the best way I could describe Andre Fialgo. But man, when this guy puts those shots on you, if he lands on your chin, he can put out just about anybody. Fialgo's got one of the cleanest left hooks in the game. You saw it displayed against Miguel Baeza and most recently against Cameron Van Camp, where he got stunned on the feet and then he landed a right uppercut into a left hook. But before that, it was a left hook into a right uppercut. Cameron Van Camp tried to mirror his combination and throw the exact same combo that he threw, and he got caught with a right uppercut. Boom! Left hook on the chin. Timed it perfectly, spun his head around, dropped him, and put him out in the first round. Prior to that, again, I believe a knockout victory over Miguel Baeza in the first round. So 2 back-to-back first-round knockouts. One at 2 minutes and 35 seconds against Cameron Van Camp at UFC 274, and one at 4 minutes and 39 seconds of the first round against Miguel Baeza. He fought in April, May, and now he's coming back again in June. So 3 fights in 3 months. Like I said, the new reincarnation of Fight Island Hamzat. A really solid fight, and you look, like I said, his last loss was coming against Michel Pereira, who just recently got a decision victory over Santiago Ponzinibbio. That was at UFC 270 in January of 2022. He lost via unanimous decision. Just got outclassed, outworked on the feet. Pereira was better with the fakes and feints and just a lot cleaner with his strikes. But Jake Matthews is not somebody I believe that's going to be able to outstrike Fialgo on the feet. I do believe that there will be some issues for him, though, and we'll talk about Jake Matthews right now. We go over to Jake Matthews, and he holds a record of 17 victories and 5 defeats. 4 wins coming by way of KO, TKO, 7 submissions, and 6 decisions. He is currently coming off a loss to Sean Brady in March of 2021 at UFC 259. He did okay against Brady early in the fight. He was landing the double jab right hand and the 1-2 down the middle, also landing the 3-2. But the best combo that Jake Matthews has is the double jab to the right hand. And I believe he's going to be looking for that against Fialgo, who he doesn't load up a ton on his shots, but he does wind up a little bit when he throws his combinations, especially when he throws that uppercut. So I expect Matthews to try to stick behind the jab, double it up, and then follow up with the cross behind it, get him to keep his hands up, slip off the center for the jab, and then come back with the right hand. I think we're going to see a lot of that from Jake Matthews, a lot of work on the feet. A lot of people believing that Matthews will look to employ his wrestling. I would agree. I think that it would be smart for Jake Matthews to use his wrestling in this fight. Try to get Fialgo down to the ground, work the ground and pound, work the top control, get in the half guard, work some elbows from there, work some punches, try to advance position into the full mount, look to pepper him up on the ground with ground and pound, and then eventually look to lock up a submission or just ground and pound TKO him. I definitely think that's Jake Matthews' best path to a victory, is to use his wrestling, use his grappling, and on the feet, use fakes and feints, but stick behind the jab. If you can use the jab to kind of disrupt the combinations of an Andre Fialgo, I think you can get some good work done. I think you can stifle him, and I think that sticking behind that jab is going to be a key for Matthews. If he can't get behind the jab early and often, Fialgo is going to step in and land that beautiful left hook, land the right hand, and land that right uppercut that he's become known for. Best shot from Fialgo, though, is definitely his left hook. And if he lands on anybody's chin, he's got the power to put him out. We'll look at takedown defense for Andre Fialgo. It's not the greatest, I believe. Oh, you know what? It's not bad. He's got a 75% takedown defense rate. I think Matthews is definitely going to be looking to close that distance and test that takedown defense. With Matthews, in terms of a takedown accuracy, he's got a 41% takedown accuracy rate, though. So even though he is a good wrestler, he can get those takedowns, he can work from the top, I still believe that it's not going to be easy for Matthews to close that distance. Like I said, he's going to have to stick behind that jab, use the 1-1-2, use the 1-2-3, use the hook cross that he used against Sean Brady early. And if he can stick behind that jab, it's a possibility that he can continue to outpoint Fialgo for 15 minutes. But I really don't think his defense is the greatest. I don't think that he's going to be able to avoid the power shots of Fialgo for 15 minutes straight. You look at his overall striking defense, and let's see, do we have it up here? He's got a 61% defense, so it's not terrible. Fialgo actually has a worse defense, coming back at 48% striking defense. But I do believe that Fialgo is going to be able to get in the range. I think he's going to use low kicks early, but he's going to set him up behind the fakes with the jab, fake with the right hand, low kick, fake with the right hand, switch to the inside low kick. I think he's going to work those low kicks early and often, and he's going to work low to high, high to low. 1-2 hook, maybe a solid low kick, a low kick into a left hook, right low kick, swing back with the left hook as you pull your leg back and kind of use that hip motion to land that left hook. I think Matthews is going to be open for it. I think he's going to come forward on a combination, leave his chin up in the air, get clipped with that left hook, get dropped, and get knocked out. I know a lot of people are high on Jake Matthews. They've been high on him for a while. He's been in the UFC for a long time, more UFC experience than Fialgo overall, and got in the UFC really early at 19 years old. But I don't think he's going to be able to use that grappling against Fialgo and be able to control him. Even if he does get those takedowns, he might get 1 or 2, but he's not going to be able to control him on the top for very long. And whenever it stays on the feet, it's only a matter of time before Fialgo can close that distance and bomb away with those combinations. The right uppercut to the left hook to the right uppercut, the 1-2, the left hook into the overhand right, the left hook, overhand right, left hook, right uppercut. Those combinations are going to be coming heavy and coming often, and it's going to crack the chin of Jake Matthews in the first round. I don't even think Matthews makes it out of the first round. Potentially gets to the second, but I wouldn't bank on it. My pick is Andre Fialgo to defeat Jake the Celtic Kid Matthews via a first round knockout. He's going to catch him with the left hook with his chin up in the air as Matthews is throwing a combo, drop him, and get the finish. You look at the odds for this fight, they're pretty even in terms of money line. Fialgo's a minus 140, Jake Matthews a plus 120. I think Fialgo's a good pick for your parlays this week. If you want to ride the underdog, I wouldn't blame you, but I don't think this is a good spot at all to ride the underdog. You look at the wins for Jake Matthews, and, he's been in the UFC a long time. I believe he's 10-5 in the UFC. He's got wins over, his best win in the UFC is probably over Diego Sanchez. He went to decision with Sanchez in 2020. Decision with Emil Meek. A decision with Rostam Akman. He's not beating the best of the best. Lost to via submission to Anthony Rocco Martin. Lost to Sean Brady via submission. Decision to Andrew Holbrook. A TKO to Kevin Lee. A submission to James Vick. The wins and losses aren't that impressive. And the guys he's losing to, aside from Kevin Lee and Sean Brady, not the best guys to be losing to in your UFC career. So I would definitely not be riding Matthews here. Like I said, I think money line is good. I think the odds are good, minus 140 to a plus 120. I think that's a lot of value on Fialgo if you want to ride him straight up or put him in a parlay. I would potentially wait to see what the knockout prop is for Andre Fialgo, because I do believe he will be able to crack the chin. And I know that Matthews hasn't been knocked out a bunch in his career, but if anybody can do it, it's Andre Fialgo. So wait maybe a little bit. If you want to throw him in a parlay, go ahead. Bet him straight up on the money line. That's good value. But I would maybe wait for the knockout prop and see what it comes out as. But Andre Fialgo by first round knockout. All right, and now we move to the main card with the first fight we're breaking down on the podcast being in the UFC's flyweight division between top 15 ranked contenders. You've got the number 8 ranked Rogerio Bonteri, who comes into this fight with a record of 17 victories, 4 defeats, and 1 no contest, going up against the number 14 ranked guy who kind of got off on a little bit of a rough patch in the UFC, some questionable decision losses to Mateus Nicolau and Alexandre Pantoja. Not bad to lose to those guys at all. Definitely great competition. And the number 14 ranked Manel Starboy Kopp, or Starboy Manel Kopp. I believe it goes first before his name. So Starboy Manel Kopp ranked 14, coming into the fight with a record of 17 victories and 6 defeats, going up against the number 8 ranked Rogerio Bonteri. I like this fight. I think this can be a tricky fight this weekend where you look at the odds for the fight, and let's see what the UFC has them priced at currently. You've got Bonteri as a plus 180 underdog to minus 220 for Manel Kopp. I think that's a little high for Manel. I do think that he's coming off 2 back-to-back knockouts against Ode Osborne with that flying knee at the end of the first round, and then obviously that KO over Zhalgas Zhumagulov. That was a great win for him, and it really kind of showed that he's arrived in the UFC after, like I said, some questionable decision losses to Nicolau and also the UFC debut against Alexandre Pantoja. A lot of people are very high on Manel Kape. Manel has been around for a long time, competed in Ryzen. I believe he's a Ryzen champion. He's got 11 wins coming by way of KO, 5 submissions, and 1 decision. So out of 17 wins, 16 victories are via decision. He's got 6 losses, 4 by decision, 2 of them coming in the UFC, and then 2 losses via submission, but never been knocked out before. I don't expect Rogerio Bonteri to be the guy who knocks him out either, but you never know. It could happen. It's the UFC. And Bonteri does carry some heavy power in his hands. He's got a really solid right hand. We saw him land it against Brandon Royval in his last fight. Really solid right hand, just pop, pop, boom, pop, pop, pop. He can pair it up with a left hook into the right hand, the 3-2, or follow it up with use the jab to set it up and then come down the middle. You saw against Zumagulov with Manel Kape that he can get hit by those straight punches, the straight right as he throws a low kick, but he can come back and counter you on your own low kick like he did against like he did against Zalgas with a left hook into a right hand. I think that we know the path of victory for both of these guys. If it stays on the feet, I expect Manel Kape to run away with it. I think it would be close early because Bonteri, like I said, he's not incompetent when it comes to the striking on the feet. He's got decent distance management, good 1-2s, a solid right hand that's probably his best shot. He does wing some of his punches, but if he can set you up with that 1-2, he packs some power in it. He hurt Brandon Royval with it. I think that he's got power to land on the chin of Manel and hurt him. But like we said, Manel has never been knocked out before. So I don't think it would have enough power to put him out. But maybe it could stun him and then open up the takedowns, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling game for Bonteri, which is exactly where he wants to get this fight. Out of 16 victories for Rogerio Bonteri, 11 come by way of submission. So if he's going to win this fight, it's going to be in the grappling aspect. He's going to look to get in on the hips of Manel Kape and get to the body lock and work those trips, inside and outside trips, to bring you one way and then drag you back the opposite direction. Quick change of direction to an outside trip. He's going to be looking to get Manel Kape to the ground and work his outstanding, stellar top game grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When he gets on top of you, he doesn't give you a whole lot of space. But the only problem with a guy like Bonteri is, let's say Manel Kape's piecing him up on the feet, landing his combinations, constantly changing his stances, straight left hand, 1-2, left hand, right hook, right uppercut, left hook, boom, 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 and he switches to orthodox, bop, 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 bop. If he's landing good shots on the feet the whole round and Bonteri takes him down and controls him but doesn't do a lot of damage, they're not really rewarding a lot of grappling when it comes to not getting any damage off, not really advancing position, and not really going for a finish. You've seen that more and more recently in the UFC, where some people believed certain fighters should have won a decision, but they didn't do enough on the ground in order to make that a reality. I think that it could be a factor of Manel Kape could get caught in a submission by Bonteri. He's a great grappler. He's a dangerous, dangerous guy. You saw what he did to Kai Kara-France before he got knocked out. He was immediately able to shoot in on one of his punches, take the back, jump to the backpack position, body triangle him, get him to the ground, almost lock up a rear naked choke, switching from side to side, constantly switching between, the different areas, going to the left, switching back, going to the right, switching the grips, going back and forth, working to the top position. And once you got him on your back, it's not an easy guy to get off of you. He is a dangerous competitor. And like I said, not incompetent on the feet either. I could see one of the right hands of Bonteri stunning Manel Kape on the feet. He's got power. His technique is decent, but I don't think he's going to want to play around in the stand-up game with Manel Kape for too long. When you look at Manel, they both have an equal height at 5'5", and Manel has a 1-inch reach advantage. But let's look at the takedown defense, because I think that could be an issue here for Manel. Overall, he's got an 80% takedown defense. 80% takedown defense, 60% takedown accuracy for Rogerio Bonteri. I don't necessarily think that Bonteri is going to get Manel Kape to the ground a bunch throughout the fight, but I do expect at least one takedown to come through for Bonteri. And the problem is, can one takedown from Rogerio Bonteri be enough to take the back, get to the back, work the ground and pound, and set up a submission? He might only need one, to set it up. And we looked throughout Manel Kape's record, he's never been knocked out, but he has been submitted twice. Those submission losses came by way of a arm triangle choke from Kyoji Horiguchi, and then also let's see, it said he had another loss via submission, but I don't see it on here. Arm triangle choke. A rear naked choke. Okay, so he lost to rear naked choke back in April of 2014. So he can get submitted. He has been submitted before, but I definitely think that it's not going to be an easy avenue for Bonteri to get to. But I think that if he's going to win this fight, he has to work the grappling. He has to get to the top position. He has to flow from position to position. He's very good at following your hips and floating from mount to back mount, back to the mount, to half guard. You know, the getting off on the angle to try to work the arm bar. If that doesn't work, he goes back to your back, locks in the body triangle, works the ground and pound, tries to get the rear naked chokes. I mean, that's where he's going to win this fight. If it stays on the feet for too long, I do think Starboy is going to light him up into outer space. You know, he's got the name Starboy. I think this guy can be a star in the UFC's flyweight division. He, like I said, he's lost twice via submission, but he also has 5 submissions of his own right on his record, but I don't expect him to get a submission over Rogerio Bonteri. I think that on the feet, we know Manel Kape, man. He's constantly changing from orthodox to southpaw, southpaw to orthodox. When he set up that flying knee with Ode Osborne, he was switching orthodox to southpaw, straight left, boom, switching back to orthodox, switch to southpaw, boom, came up the middle with a knee as Ode Osborne changed levels. Caught him on the chin, dropped him, put him out. The whole round was pretty close. I think Ode was probably keeping him at range a little bit more than he would have liked, and he was starting to pick it up. But, you know, in the blink of an eye, Manel Kape put his lights out. Against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, I mean, he got hurt on the feet. Zhumagulov landed one of those winging shots that we talked about before on the podcast, stumbled him, you know, tried to close the show. Manel switched orthodox, boom, left hook, right hand, dropped him, jumped on him, and put together a 7-10, or a 10 to 15 punch combo up against the cage. 1, 2, 3, right uppercut, right hook, boom, 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 boom. It was like a Street Fighter combo. The more punches you landed, the more points you were getting, and the more tokens that were going into your wallet. I mean, that's the guy that Manel Kape is. He's a volume guy, but he's got power, and he's got the explosiveness to put you out with one shot. We haven't seen it much in the UFC, but he's gotten 2 finishes back-to-back after 2 lackluster performances, and one fight that many people believed he could have won against Nicolau, and then a close fight against Pantoja, who's a veteran in the UFC, in the UFC's flyweight division. But he came up in a losing effort as well. But it wasn't as close as the Nicolau fight, but still. But he's living up to the name of Starboy, and he's living up to the hype that he had before he got into the UFC when he was over in Ryzen, more and more and more throughout his UFC career. And I think that when it comes to breaking down the winner of this fight, I think it's going to play out very similar to the Kai Kara-France Rogerio Bonteri fight. I think Bonteri is going to get in close to him, not right away, maybe like a minute into the first round, take him down, work the back control, but I think Manel is going to have enough defense and defensive responsibility to avoid any potential submission attempts. He's going to, you know, kind of work on him for a couple minutes on the ground. He's going to get back up to the feet. He's going to instantly start moving forward, in and out movement, switching his stances. Boom, jab, 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 left hook, switch stance, southpaw, straight left. 1, 2, right hook, straight left. 1, 1, 2, switch back, orthodox. Fake the flying knee, switch back. He's going to constantly be switching, kind of getting Rogerio Bonteri off his game. He's going to land a shot up top. I think he's going to land the 1-2, follow up with the uppercut. He's going to hurt him, get on that combination with the volume, just pop, 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 and then he's going to hurt him, jump on him, and get the finish. I think it's going to be a death via accumulation and death by volume for Manel Kape here, and I'm going to go with Starboy, Manel Kape, to defeat Rogerio Bonteri via a second-round TKO, death by volume. And you look at the odds for this fight, like I said, I believe we already touched on it. Manel Kape is a minus 220 favorite to a plus 180 dog for the number 8 ranked Rogerio Bonteri. I think the odds are decent, but I think it should be a little bit closer. I would price Manel around a minus 180 and then maybe come back on Bonteri at a plus 150, plus 160, somewhere around there. I think that's a better line. I think minus 220 is a little steep considering how Manel started his UFC career, but he is hot, he is heavy, and he is working his way back up to become the guy that everybody knew and the guy that had all this hype outside of the UFC. But I am going to ride with Starboy here to get another finish and make it 3 in a row in his UFC career, improving to 18-6. Now we move to the featured bout in a rematch, and a highly anticipated rematch of the best female fight in UFC history, in my opinion, and one of the best female fights of all time, in a rematch between former strawweight champions and the number 2 ranked Magnum Zhang Weili, who comes into the fight with a record of 21 victories and 3 defeats, going up against the Boogie Woman, the former strawweight champion in her own right, in Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk 2. Weili versus Joanna 2. This is a great fucking fight. Man, what a matchup here. What a rematch. A fight that makes perfect sense at the current time, considering Joanna hasn't had a fight in the UFC since her first fight with Zhang Weili at UFC 248 back in March of 2020, I believe. Yeah, UFC 248, March of 2020. I believe, right? Am I wrong? Let's check that out. No, March of 2020. So a great fight there. She hasn't fought in 2 years, a little over 2 years. Weili obviously been way more active, had 3 fights since their first fight. 2 fights against Rose Namajunas, the former strawweight champion now, which I believe is questionable. 1 loss via first round KO with the lead left high kick, but came back in the rematch at UFC 260? No. Not 261. 268 maybe? Yeah, UFC 268. And lost the fight via decision, but used her wrestling more. Looks to be more patient, more technical. Used the use of her low kicks and combinations on the feet. But using a wrestling and what she learned out at Fight Ready is something that I think will carry her very far in this fight against Joanna. Joanna, like I said, hasn't fought since their first fight at UFC 248, but a great matchup here and a fight that I'm really looking forward to breaking down for you. We'll look at the stats quickly. Joanna Jędrzejczyk holds a record of 16 victories and 4 defeats. Zhang Weili, like we said, 21 victories and 3 defeats. Let's see if we can go back. We'll pull up Weili first to see, since this computer's being a little stupid. So Weili, 21 victories, 3 defeats, 10 victories coming by way of knockout or TKO, 7 by submission and 4 decision, 17 finishes out of 21 victories. When it comes to losses, 1 by KO and 2 via decision, 1 coming to Rose Namajunas and the knockout coming to Rose Namajunas. So 2 losses out of those 3 are coming at the hands of Thug Rose Namajunas. And then she lost her first professional MMA fight, I believe, and then went on a 20-fight win streak, including the victory over the former strawweight champion in Jessica Andrade in her title-winning performance at UFC's first event in China. And yeah, it was her first pro fight that she lost to Mang Bo via decision at CMMAL China MMA League in November of 2013. So from November of 2013 all the way until April of 2021, she had no losses. She was undefeated. So she was undefeated for 7 years almost. Or 7 years. And then obviously the 2 back-to-back losses against the former champion in Rose Namajunas. Now, when it comes to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Joanna champion, could she become Joanna champion if she wins this fight? Definitely a possibility, especially considering Carla Esparza is the champ. I believe that Joanna is chomping at the bits to get another fight with Carla Esparza. If she wins here, I definitely think that's a possibility. Dana White has said that whoever wins this fight will more than likely be next for the champion in Esparza. If that's the case, I think you run Namajunas versus Marina Rodriguez in the meantime. But her last win for Joanna was coming in October of 2019 over Michelle Waterson via decision. Prior to that, she had a decision loss to Valentina Shevchenko, but that was at 125. She moved up a weight class. She went all 5 rounds. It was competitive. It was a good fight, but she definitely lost it there. Before that, she had a decision over Tisha Torres. And then those back-to-back losses to Rose Namajunas. So both of these women have back-to-back losses to Rose Namajunas. I think that's a pretty interesting stat. And then, yeah, her last fight, March 7th of 2020. So over 2 years since we've seen Joanna in the cage, but it was against the opponent who she's rematching here in Zhang Weili. I think when it comes down to this fight, we can break down the stats quickly. I believe that's something that's important to look at. When it comes to reach, Joanna's going to have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. She's going to want to use that to the best of her ability. Stay on the outside. Look to counter the counter of Zhang Weili. That's where I believe Joanna is going to do the best work in this fight. Looking to counter, looking to poke and prod, keep her at a distance. 1, 2, 3, low kick, 1, 2, low kick, left hook, right hand, left hook, right low kick. Like, you have to put the combinations together and mix it up high-low. Mix up the hands with the legs. Joanna is one of the best pure strikers in mixed martial arts and one of the best women's pure strikers on the planet. And I think that goes without saying. I think when it comes to technical ability, Joanna is definitely the more technical striker than Zhang Weili. Zhang has great power. She has good technique, decent footwork, good in and out movement, good lateral movement. She likes to move her head left and right as she moves in, fake with the rear hand into the right low kick. She likes to go, into the lead left low kick. She likes to use that left low kick a lot when she's fighting an orthodox fighter to drag them towards their left side, but also drag them into the right hand that she possesses. Weili loves to throw that 1-2, the jab cross. The cross from Weili is phenomenal, and she uses that inside left low kick to drag you towards the right hand. It's kind of like pulling the rug out from under you, but she's inside low kicking you, dragging you towards your left or her right to follow up with the right hand and then come back on the counter with a left hook if you've managed to slip off the center line. Left hook and right hand are the best shots from Zhang Weili. But since training out at Fight Ready and in her Rose Namajunas rematch at UFC 268, I think we're going to see a lot of and also before I say this, since it's 3 rounds, I think we're going to see a lot of definitely see a grappling heavy approach here from Zhang Weili. I think she's going to look to close the distance, get to the body lock, and work her takedowns. Whether it's countering one of the kicks of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, whether it's closing the distance against the cage and the over-unders and in the double underhooks and getting the takedowns, I think we're going to see a more wrestling heavy approach and a grappling heavy game plan from Zhang Weili here. I think that's her best path to victory because on the feet, honestly, aside from the damage that Joanna Jędrzejczyk suffered where her forehead had that huge hematoma and she looked like the Elephant Man, aside from that, I think that the fight was very close. And if Joanna didn't have the damage that she did, it's a possibility that Joanna could have got her hand raised and been the new strawweight champion after that fight. The fight was very close. It was razor thin. And I think that Joanna was picking it up in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. Again, this is a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight. That's something that I think UFC fans and MMA analysts who are breaking down this fight, I think they have to realize the fact that this is a 3-rounder, not a 5-rounder. And I think that honestly plays into the game of Zhang Weili. I think if this was 5 rounds again, I think you could easily see Joanna Jędrzejczyk pulling it off. But the fact that it's 3 rounds and that Zhang Weili, since training out at Fight Ready, is using a lot of her wrestling and grappling, and she definitely showcased it in the rematch against Rose Namajunas, getting a bunch of takedowns. Joanna almost got taken down by Zhang in the first fight as well. There were a lot of times where she got knocked off balance. She got a kick caught. Zhang tried to use a knee tap takedown. She caught the kick and tried to take her off her feet. Joanna does have good takedown defense. I mean, if you look at the stats, her overall takedown defense sits at 81%. Zhang Weili has a 60% takedown defense. 31% takedown accuracy for Zhang Weili, but a lot of those takedown attempts were in her early fights and in the rematch against Rose Namajunas. She didn't obviously have the chance to use her takedowns in the first fight because it ended so quickly against Rose, but the fights before that and leading up to the title, aside from her really early fights in the UFC, she didn't use her takedowns at all, and she didn't try to use her takedowns. She has a very good head and arm throw. She likes to counter opponents stepping in and get to the head and arm position and get the throws there. I definitely think that's a possibility for her to counter Joanna moving in, but since she fights at range and keeps it at a kicking distance, I think she's going to want to close that distance, trap her up against the cage, potentially switch her stance to southpaw, then switch back, push her up against the cage, and work that takedown game. I think the takedowns in wrestling are what are going to carry Zhang Weili very far in this fight, and if she does get Joanna to the ground, I don't necessarily think she can hold her down for a prolonged period of time, but I think she can hold her down for at least a minute and a half. And if the rounds are close but Weili gets those takedowns in there, I definitely think that can sway the decision in her favor. I think that when it comes to the striking, I said that Joanna is the more technical striker. She's obviously the more technical striker. And if it's a 3-round fight with no wrestling involved, I could easily see Joanna winning the fight on the judges' scorecards. Because like I said, aside from that damage that she suffered to her head and her forehead and everything, that fight was extremely close, and it doesn't surprise me. Like, it wouldn't have surprised me if Joanna got her hand raised there, like we already talked about. When you look at striking numbers for the fight, Joanna lands 6.3 significant strikes per minute to 5.47 for Zhang Weili, so very close. 45% significant strike accuracy rate for Zhang Weili compared to a 48% significant strike accuracy rate for Joanna. So again, neck and neck in terms of the numbers and also in terms of the accuracy. When you look at strikes absorbed per minute, I think we already knew that Zhang Weili was not as technical as Joanna, and I think that shows in her offense and her defense. She absorbs 4.13 strikes per minute compared to 3.08 for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Defense, 52% for Zhang Weili to 64% striking defense for Joanna. I think the longer this stays on the feet, it does favor Joanna if she can keep it at range, keep it at a distance, poke and prod, use a jab, the 1-2 left hook, right low kick, come back with a left hook, 1-1-2 right low kick. A lot of the fading off the center line, throwing the right low kick, I think that's going to be a big weapon for her because Zhang does have a beautiful straight right hand, a beautiful jab, and a beautiful left hook. But she does wing her punches, and when it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5 punch combinations, she keeps her head on the center line and just kind of walks forward. But due to the fact that she has so much speed, she can kind of rely on it because people aren't going to come back on the counter. But Joanna is the much faster fighter, in my opinion. I think Joanna does have, well, I wouldn't say much faster, but she does have a speed advantage, in my opinion. And I think that if you keep your head on the center line for, those 3 rounds, and doesn't use that wrestling, she can get pieced up by Joanna, especially behind the jab, behind the 1-2. Joanna's got a crisp jab, a crisp 1-2, and she puts her combinations together better than any woman in MMA. I guess when it comes down to the prediction and who I think is going to win, I mean, it is a close fight. I definitely think that I wouldn't be surprised since it's 3 rounds if Joanna does win it. If it was a 5-rounder, I would definitely lean Joanna to win by decision. But since it's 3 rounds and since I believe since training out at Fight Ready that Zhang Weili is going to be looking to employ her grappling, work the body locks, work the head and arm throws, get her up against the cage and work the changing of directions into the outside and inside trips. I think we're going to see a more wrestling and grappling heavy approach from Weili in this 15-minute fight, and that is going to carry her to a victory. So my pick is Magnum Zhang Weili to defeat Joanna Jędrzejczyk via a 29-28 split decision. I think it's going to be close, but the grappling is going to edge it out for Magnum here. When you look at the odds for this fight, like we said, I believe it's very close. You've got Zhang at a -160 favorite to a +140 for Joanna. Considering the fact that Joanna's been off for 2 years, I think Joanna should potentially be a little bit bigger of an underdog. Maybe having Zhang Weili as like a -195 to a +170 for Joanna would be a good line. But you're getting a good value here on Zhang Weili. I think she's definitely a good fighter to bet if you want to put her up in a parlay. But betting her straight up, I don't think it's necessarily the best fight because it's going to be close either way. But I do think the grappling and wrestling edge that Zhang Weili showcased in that rematch against Rose Namajunas is going to carry her very far in this rematch against Joanna. So I would lean Zhang Weili, and that's going to be my pick to beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk in her return via decision. All right, now we move to the co-main event of the evening for the UFC Women's Flyweight Championship of the World. You have the champion, reigning, defending champion, I should say, in Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko, who is the only UFC women's flyweight champion to ever be in the UFC. And she has a record of 22 victories and 3 defeats, with 15 victories coming by way of finish. On the other side, you have the number 4 ranked Taila Santos, who comes in with a phenomenal record of 19 victories and 1 defeat, with 13 out of those 19 victories coming by way of finish. 10 KO, TKOs, and 3 submissions in this fantastic co-main event. I think that Taila Santos is the best option and the most interesting fight that Valentina Shevchenko could take right now in her UFC career. I also think it's her most challenging fight. And that doesn't mean that I don't think that Shevchenko is going to win or anything like that. But I definitely think that Santos is the toughest challenge that Valentina has had to fight so far. We're going to look at the overall stats really quick. 22-3 for the champion in Valentina to 19-1 for Taila Santos. Taila's going to have a 1-inch height advantage, 5'5" for the champion in Valentina to 5'6" for Santos. She's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage, 68-inch reach to a 67-inch reach for the champion in Valentina. 38-inch leg reach for Valentina Shevchenko to 37.5-inch leg reach for Taila Santos. We're going to look at the win percentages. 56% of the wins coming by way of KO or TKO for the challenger in Taila Santos. 39% coming by way of TKO or KO for the champion in Valentina. 30% coming by way of submission for Valentina to 17% coming by way of sub for Santos. 30% by decision for Valentina and 28% by decision for Taila Santos. Average fight time, 16 minutes, 45 seconds for the champion in Valentina to 13 minutes and 18 seconds for Santos. Knockdown average per 15-minute fight. This is where Santos actually edges out the champion with a 0.07 knockdowns per 15-minute fight for Valentina to a 0.56 for Taila Santos. So in every one of her fights, Santos gets 1 knockdown out of every 2 fights. That's basically what those odds or what that stat evens out to. So out of every 2 fights in her pro MMA career, she gets 1 knockdown per every 2 fights, if that makes sense. Even though she got like 2 knockdowns against Joanne Calderwood. When you look at the significant strikes, 3.21 significant strikes landed per minute for the champion in Valentina to 3.71 for Taila Santos, so it edged out for the challenger. Significant strike percentage, 52% for Valentina Shevchenko to 50% for Taila Santos. Strikes absorbed per minute, pretty close, to be honest. 1.87 for the champion in Valentina to 2.23 for Taila Santos. And then defense overall, again, neck and neck. 64% striking defense for Valentina to 63% striking defense for Taila Santos. When you look at the grappling, again, it's probably going to be very close. 2.62 takedowns per 15-minute fight for Valentina Shevchenko to 2.44 takedowns per 15-minute fight for Taila Santos. Takedown accuracy, again, on the side of the challenger. 64% takedown accuracy rate for Valentina Shevchenko to an 86% takedown accuracy rate for Taila Santos. 77% takedown defense for Valentina Shevchenko to an 88% takedown defense for Santos. And then submission average per 15-minute fight, 0.34 for the champion in Valentina to 1.13 per 15-minute fight for the challenger in Taila Santos. I believe this is one of the only fights where Valentina is actually outmatched in a lot of the stats in the statistics, I guess, when it comes to breaking down the fight. Again, I said this is her most interesting fight currently, 19-1 versus 22-3, and I think this is going to be her toughest matchup, and I think it's going to play out to be Valentina's toughest matchup to date. I like the fight a lot, actually. I didn't like it so much leading up to it. I was like, oh, Santos' record isn't that crazy, but it is a good fight. And then I really started looking into it. And although the wins aren't coming over the greatest caliber of competition, I think that Santos can pull it off here. And again, I'm not making a pick yet, so don't jump down my throat yet. But I would not be surprised if we see an upset on the night for Taila Santos to become new. We're going to look at the fights for Taila Santos. So in the UFC, She had a win on the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series via decision. She lost her UFC debut to Mara Romero Borella, who her overall MMA record is pretty terrible. It's 12 wins and 9 defeats, but she lost her UFC debut via decision. She came back, defeated Molly McCann via decision, defeated Jillian Robertson via decision, and then also defeated Joanne Calderwood by dropping her twice in the first round with a beautiful left hook right hand and a 1-2, and then jumping on her back and getting the rear naked choke. That was when Calderwood was going to get the fight against Valentina Shevchenko for the title, but Valentina had to pull out of the fight, and then Jennifer Maia beat Joanne Calderwood or Joanne Wood, and then ended up getting the title shot instead. But at the time when at the time when Santos beat Joanne Calderwood, it was a big deal. Like, it was a big deal that she got that victory, and not only got it, but finished her in the first round. I know she got finished by submission, and she has been submitted before by the likes of Jennifer Maia, but she's never been dropped and stunned like that in her MMA career, at least to my knowledge. I could be wrong, and you can correct me in the comments or correct me anywhere you want if I am wrong here. But, I mean, the stats are very close. The stats do favor Taila Santos in a lot of areas for this fight. And, you know, she's got a 1-inch reach advantage, a 1-inch height advantage. So, like, it is close. But the one thing I think that Taila Santos is going to have the advantage in here is the fact that she is a decently technical striker, but she doesn't care to go into the fire. She doesn't care to push forward, get in the face of Valentina Shevchenko, and, you know, throw those combinations, the wide left hooks, the wide overhand rights, the 1-2s, the overhands, the left hooks. I mean, she caught Joanne Wood with a wide overhand left, a left hook, and a wide overhand right, a 1-2. She does have good straight punches, but she also wings her punches too. And I think that against a girl like Valentina, you can't stay on the outside and respect her too much. Like, Jessica Andrade went in and tried to get in close, take her down, rough her up. But she was going up a weight class. She wasn't big enough, and she was strong, but she didn't have the strength advantage. And again, she was going up a weight class. Santos is close in height. She's close in reach. She's a big, tall, long, rangy girl, and she uses her range, but she's not afraid to bite down on the mouthpiece and get into your face and try to land wide looping shots or just land volume on you and push you back. I don't think she's going to give Valentina as much respect as her previous opponents. And I think that's where the success is going to come in this fight for Taila Santos. I think that the fact that she does get in the face, wing those punches, and throw reckless abandonment sometimes is what can bring her to get a victory. Now, again, she did lose to Mara Romero Borella via decision. She beat Jillian Robertson via decision, who, again, not the greatest record in the UFC. She's kind of, I believe her record is actually pretty terrible. I could be wrong. Let's see. Jillian Robertson is 10-7. So, I mean, 10-7. Mara Romero Borella did beat her, and she has a record of 12-9. So, like, the girls that she's lost to aren't the best. The girls she's beat, Roxanne Modafferi, that's a good win. 25-20, not the greatest record, but she's a veteran. But the best win clearly is coming over Joanne Wood. I think a lot of people are going to count out Santos here because it's Valentina. She's had the championship for so long. She's been unstoppable unless your name was Amanda Nunes. She beat the current UFC women's bantamweight champion in Juliana Pena via submission in the first round. I believe it was the first round. Like, if Valentina wins this fight, I guarantee you she goes up and fights Juliana Pena if Pena gets past Nunes in the rematch. But honestly, I think that we're going to have the dog spoil the day. I think we're going to get one of the biggest upsets in women's MMA history and one of the biggest upsets in MMA history again. I know that Juliana Pena just beat Nunes, and you can't really get a bigger upset than that. You can get it here. I think that the fights that Valentina has had, whether it was against Andrade, who she was able to outpower for her moving up a weight class, against, Lauren Murphy, who was just gun shy and didn't really have much of anything to offer in terms of being on the feet and on the ground. Jennifer Maia did lose the fight, but she did win a round by getting Valentina down to the ground and, made her look human, but she adjusted, and then Valentina obviously won the other 4 rounds. But she did take her down. She did have good top control, good top pressure. Santos is going to be close to the size of Valentina. She's going to be tall, long, rangy. I think if they go to the ground, she can potentially hold her down for some of those rounds. And on the feet, I think she has that I don't give a shit attitude to close that distance and not allow Valentina to kind of point fight her way or karate style point fight her way to a decision or a knockout. I'm not saying that Valentina's a decision fighter, but she's not going to be able to have that clean technical fight that she's used to having in a lot of her other performances. And I'm going to go with the underdog here. I'm going to go with Ann New. So my pick for this fight is going to be the number 4 ranked Taila Santos to defeat Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko via a 48-47 unanimous decision. I don't think she finishes her. I think it's a possibility with the power and the recklessness that she does possess, but I think she's going to edge her out 3 rounds to 2, and we're going to get a 48-47 split decision with Taila Santos becoming the new women's flyweight champion. That's probably going to be my most bold pick on the podcast today. And I know Santos is a plus 450 underdog. I mean, even if you think Valentina is going to dominate her, why not throw a little bit of money on Taila Santos? I just broke the fight down. I feel like I explained it pretty well, but I'm leaning the underdog. That doesn't mean you guys have to. And this is actually the first time I think I've ever picked against Valentina. But man, I just got a feeling that the underdog's going to pull it off here. I didn't before I really started watching the film, but the more I watched it, I think she's got some things that can give Valentina some trouble. We saw a little chink in the armor against Jennifer Mayan. I think this is where the armor finally gets cut off the body. And Taila Santos becomes the new women's flyweight champion by defeating Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko via 48-47 split decision. And now we move to the main event of the evening. For the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship, you have a battle between the current UFC Light Heavyweight Champion in Glover Teixeira, an MMA veteran with a record of 33 victories and 7 defeats, going up against the number 2 ranked kind of newcomer to the UFC, but coming off 2 fights in the promotion and 2 knockouts over 2 of the best in the division in Volkan Oezdemir and Dominic the Devastator Reyes, in Yuri Denisa or BJP Prohaska. So Yuri Prohaska versus Glover Teixeira for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. This is a fantastic fight. There's only one fight that I think could be better in this division, and it is Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rockach. I thought Rockach was going to beat Jan Blachowicz, but obviously he blew his knee out in a fight where I believe he was on his way to winning that fight via decision or potentially getting a finish, but I would lean more towards the decision for that. But obviously that isn't what happened. Blew his knee out, unfortunate turn of events. But, Prohaska is the most entertaining light heavyweight in the UFC, and I believe the most entertaining light heavyweight in the world. I think he's one of the most entertaining guys in MMA, period. He is literally the human embodiment of the traditional samurai ways. I mean, you see the guy training, he's punching trees, he's going up to mountains and screaming his lungs out. He's meditating in the middle of the mountains. He's, sitting in the middle of a waterfall, meditating and everything like that. He's got that traditional martial artist lifestyle down to a T, and that's what he lives by. But in the cage, man, he's, again, got that kind of Wing Chun style with his hand movement and his stance switches and the hands out in front and the traditional karate style Wing Chun stance, switching his stances, moving back and forth. He reminds me a lot of a light heavyweight version of a Dominic Cruz. It's not exactly the same, but off the Volkan Oezdemir fight, that's kind of the vibe that I got, was a light heavyweight version of a Dominic Cruz. And going up against Glover Teixeira, Glover is a traditional mixed martial artist. He kind of has a Mike Tyson bob and weave traditional boxing style when it comes to, fighting on the feet. He does use some low kicks. He has a good right low kick. He doesn't go to it that often, but he might go to it against a guy who moves as much as Yuri Prohaska. I don't necessarily think he will, though. I think he's going to look to close the distance and use that phenomenal grappling and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and ground and pound that carried him through this win streak and carried him to that UFC title over Jan Blachowicz at UFC 267. We look at the record for Glover Teixeira. pull it up really quick. He has 33 victories and 7 losses, 18 wins by way of KO, TKO, 10 by submission, 5 by decision. So 28 victories coming by way of finish out of 33 wins, 7 losses, 3 by knockout, and 4 by decision. He has been knocked out by Anthony Rumble Johnson, Alexander Gustafsson, and also, who else? Who are we missing? Who else knocked him out? Are we forgetting someone? Oh, he lost his first pro MMA fight back in June of 2002 to Eric Schwartz via TKO in the second round. But the most recent KOs obviously came to Alexander Gustafsson and Anthony Rumble Johnson. Rumble caught him early in the first round with a left hook into a right uppercut, got him to block high, protecting himself from the power right hand of Glover, and then came up the middle with an uppercut and put his lights out immediately at UFC 202. And then that knockout over against Alexander Gustafsson, where he landed an uppercut, pivot off, overhand right. Boom, 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 slip pivot, boom, overhand right. Beautiful knockout. One of the best and most technical knockouts I've ever seen in MMA. That came at UFC Fight Night. Let's see. UFC Fight Night 109 in May of 2017. It was the main event in the 5th round at 1 minute and 5 seconds. But, man, Glover has been on a win streak, man. He's currently riding a 6-fight win streak. Yeah, 6-fight win streak. His last loss coming to Corey Anderson, who's a Bellator light heavyweight, on July 22nd, 2018 at UFC Fight Night 134. The main event of that night was Shogun Rua versus Anthony Smith. After that, he had a submission via arm triangle over Carl Roberson, a rear naked choke over Iwan Kutelaba, a split decision over Nikita Krylov, a 5th round TKO over Anthony Smith, a 3rd round rear naked choke submission over Thiago Santos, and a 2nd round rear naked choke submission where he claimed the light heavyweight championship at 42 years old over Jan Blachowicz. I mean, man, if Glover takes Yuri to the ground, it's a wrap. The fight's over. It's done. It doesn't matter. I mean, 10 submissions to his name, but if Yuri goes to the ground with Glover, the fight's over. If the fight stays on the feet, I think Glover's in a lot of trouble, and I think he can get knocked out. But I also think Glover has good boxing. He's got a good right uppercut, a good left hook. He uses that Mike Tyson bob and weave style, hands high, walking forward, kind of walking in a straight line. His footwork isn't really there. He just walks straight on to a lot of punches. Against a guy who moves as much as Yuri Prohaska, who has fluid on the feet, who switches his stance, who pivots, moves in and out. That's going to be a problem with the walking forward, hands up high, bob and weave traditional boxing guard of a Glover Teixeira. Like, that's going to be a problem for Glover. You can't just walk forward on a guy in Yuri Prohaska. I think we're going to see Glover throw a couple combos on the feet and then look to push Yuri up against the cage, time him, get to his hips, get to the body lock, trip takedown, shoot at, lower his level, shoot in on a takedown, get that double leg, take him down, and then work to take the back. The minute this fight hits the mat, it's basically a wrap for Yuri Prohaska. Prohaska has lost via submission, and that's something we touched on earlier, I believe. If not, then you can forgive me. But 28-3-1 for Yuri Denisa Prohaska, number 2 ranked light heavyweight in the world. He lost 2 fights one fight via submission, 2 by KO TKO. He got knocked out by Muhammad Lawal, which was his last loss in December of 2015. Since then, Yuri has gone on a win streak of 12 fights in a row. So since December 2015, he's 12-0 in professional MMA. Before the Muhammad Lawal loss, he lost to Abdul Karim Edilov via rear naked choke in the first round. And then before that, he lost via TKO to Bohan Velikovic. That was in December of 2012. And I believe Bohan is in Bellator, if I'm not mistaken, but that was via TKO as well. So 1 submission loss via rear naked choke back in 2013 does have me a little bit worried for Yuri. And the fact that Dominic Reyes was able to stun him on the feet with a left hand, after he got that little cage angle, and then Yuri kind of panic wrestled and got caught in a guillotine where Dominic Reyes almost had that guillotine, and that would have been it. He also got taken down by Dominic Reyes. It has me worried about the takedowns in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Glover because, like I said, if Glover gets Yuri to the ground, or let's say Glover hurts Yuri with a left hook, wobbles him, and Yuri panic wrestles, if he panic wrestles against Glover, Glover's going to sprawl out, spin to take the back, flatten him out, ground and pound his face into the mat, and then strangle him with a rear naked choke for the submission victory. I don't expect this fight to go past 2 rounds, and I don't expect this fight to go the distance at all. Like I said, lucky if it gets past 2 rounds. Either way, somebody's getting finished here. This is a fight where somebody's going to sleep. 2 fights in the UFC per Prohaska, 2 knockouts. First fight, UFC 251 on Fight Island, a knockout over Volkan Oezdemir. He got hurt with a left hook in that fight, got wobbled, got stunned, but he was able to weather through the storm and catch Volkan with a left question mark kick. He went inside low kick, and then he faked the inside low and came up top with a left round kick, wrapped it right around the head of Volkan, hurt him, jumped in, kind of faked the flying knee after a couple combinations, got him up against the cage, 1-2, boom, dropped him, put him out cold. Against Dominic Reyes, a lot of the same, switching stances a lot. He'll go 1-2, right uppercut, switch southpaw, right hook, straight left, left hook, right uppercut, switching stance as he moves in and out. He'll throw a right elbow to switch to southpaw, then throw a straight left hand, a right hook, a left elbow, and then he'll use that left elbow again to set up a spinning elbow as you're trying to circle away. That's what he did against Dominic Reyes. Reyes tried to time it with that cage angle to set up the left hand. He circled off, dropped his hands, and boom, got caught with the spinning elbow and knocked out. Glover, with the fact that he keeps his hands high, uses a little bit of head movement and walks forward, that's a recipe for disaster against Yuri Prohaska, because if you just put your hands up and walk forward, Yuri's going to light you up. Yuri's got the footwork. He's got the movement. He's got the hands low style. He keeps his hands on his waist sometimes, going palm to the back of the hand, kind of to hide the angle and the trajectory and the direction that the punches are coming from. By keeping your hands low and leaning your head forward, 1, you give the illusion that your body is actually closer to the opponent than it actually is, and 2, you're hiding the angle of your punches. So it's harder to see a straight right hand. It's harder to see a straight left. It's harder to see a switch stance left or a switch stance right hand. And Yuri's always changing his stances. He has a traditional style of martial arts on the feet, and he mixes it up better than any light heavyweight. Like I said, a light heavyweight version of Dominic Cruz. I do worry with the hands low that Glover might be able to time Yuri stepping in and land that overhand right, or time him with a left hook. Why do I worry about the left hook? Because up against the fence, Yuri got caught by Volkan Oezdemir with a left hook, and the left hand of Dominic Reyes caught Yuri multiple times. I know southpaw versus orthodox, a lead left hand versus a rear left hand is different, but left hands have hurt Yuri in the past and hurt him in the UFC. I worry about the left hook of Glover Teixeira. Like I said, he is tricky. He is powerful. He's got good boxing. Like I said, kind of a boxer, brawler, but really no kicking in terms of Glover Teixeira. I think it would, benefit him to use kicks here, because maybe even Yuri times him, stepping in, drops him with a shot, and then Glover can have Yuri follow him to the mat and then spin to get up to a hip, spin around and use that to get a takedown, kind of like what he did against Thiago Santos, where he got dropped and then allowed Thiago to get him on the ground, and then use that, shrimping up to a hip, turn the corner, and got into top position, and then eventually got to the back and worked to get the rear naked choke. Glover gets dropped in almost all of his fights, and I think this is the point where that drop kind of, I think this is the point where that catches up to him, but we'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about the stats very quickly. 6'2" for Glover Teixeira, 6'3" for the challenger and the number 2 ranked Yuri Prohaska. A 4-inch reach advantage for Yuri. So if Yuri can keep him on the feet and keep him at a distance, Yuri's going to light up Glover Teixeira on the feet. I really think it's going to be hard for Glover to close that distance, and the best way he's going to have to do it is to either hurt Yuri on the feet with that beautiful left hook, or land a combination, get him backing up, kind of have him lose balance, back him up to the cage, and then shoot your takedowns from there. That's the only way I see Glover having any success in this fight. 4-inch reach advantage, though, is going to be hard against the guy who uses those long hands, those long arms to measure and control the distance and then time you stepping in with the switch stance combinations. A 2.5-inch leg reach advantage also for the challenger in Yuri Prohaska. When it comes to win percentages, 90% of the wins coming by way of KO for Yuri, 53% coming by way of KO for Glover, 32% by submission for Teixeira, 7% by submission for Yuri, 15% via decision for Glover, and 3% via decision for Yuri Prohaska. So an 18% decision win rate. This fight's not going the distance. We've talked about it already. Average fight time, Glover's got a little bit more experience. I mean, vastly more experience in the UFC, but overall fight time is pretty close. 9 minutes and 10 seconds for the champion in Glover versus 7 minutes and 39 seconds for Yuri Prohaska. Knockdown average per 15-minute fight. Yuri gets almost 2 knockdowns per 15 minutes at 1.96. Glover comes back with a 0.41 knockdown average per 15-minute fight. But he's got more and more knockdowns in his recent fights, and he's looked better and better on this win streak that he's currently on. The win over Jan Blachowicz, you know, the dominating win after a very, very hard first and second round for Glover against Anthony Smith. When you look at significant strikes landed per minute, you got 3.72 for Glover Teixeira to 7.19 significant strikes landed per minute for Yuri. A huge advantage there in terms of activity and strikes landed. And then you think, oh, well, he lands so much, but his significant strike accuracy can't be that good. It's actually higher than the champion. 48% significant strike accuracy for Glover to 52% striking accuracy for the challenger and the number 2 ranked Yuri Prohaska. Strikes absorbed per minute, 3.83 for Glover Teixeira to 6.8 for Yuri Prohaska. So his defense isn't the best. He gets hit a lot. Yuri's there to be hit. That's why I'm worried about the left hook and the right hand of Glover Teixeira. Yuri is there to be hit, and left hands and the left hook has been a problem for him in his UFC career. When it comes to the grappling, I mean, it's all Glover Teixeira. 2.11 takedowns per 15-minute fight to 0.98 for Yuri Prohaska. Takedown accuracy, 100% for Yuri, but he doesn't really go for takedowns. 39% accuracy on the takedowns for Glover, but he shoots a lot of them. Takedown defense, 60% for Teixeira to 50% for Yuri. So 50% takedown defense against a guy who's as decorated a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt grappler and ground and pound artist as Glover Teixeira, that's a problem. If he gets in on the hips and takes Yuri to the ground, I mean, it can be a wrap as quick as you can say both these guys' names. I mean, that's how quickly it could be over. But, you know, I guess when it comes to the pick, I think a lot of people are going to be leaning Yuri here, and I'm not surprised. You know, I think that that's definitely a good option. I don't think Yuri should be a minus 200 favorite over Glover. I know Glover's usually an underdog. I know he gets dropped in a lot of fights, but I think this should be close to a pick 'em. I could see it like a minus 115 to a minus 110. Maybe Yuri's like a minus 140 to a plus 120 for Glover. But having Yuri as a minus 200 favorite is a bit ridiculous in my opinion. I know he's hyped. I know he's got a lot of wins. I know he's got a great record, but I think that's a little crazy. You know, but when it comes to the pick, like I said, I think that Glover can definitely get Yuri to the ground, rough him up with the ground and pound, get him to expose his back and choke him out. But I think it's going to be very hard for Glover to close the distance. And I think those first 2 rounds for Glover are going to be very hard for him to get through the wild striking style, the stance switches, the combinations, the stance switching combinations, the in and out movement, the hands low style with the punches coming at a different angle. I think that's going to be a little bit of a problem here for Glover. I also think that the hands low style of Yuri is actually going to aid him in seeing the takedown attempts and aid him a little bit in the takedown defense. That's why I think if Glover's going to get these takedowns, he's got to push and pressure Yuri up against the cage. But it's going to be hard to pressure a guy like Yuri Prohaska, who, like I said, straight left, right hand, switch stance, in and out, constantly angling, switching, pivoting off, in and out, you know, constantly hip bumping. He likes to hip bump in too, like a Dominic Cruz, which is why I made the comparison. I think Yuri's going to light him up when he's trying to close the distance, drop him. If Yuri follows Glover to the ground, he's an idiot. He has to let him up. He hurts him, drops him, lets him up, kind of times him, boom, boom, hurts him again. Glover he backs off a little bit, changes his stance, uses his hands out in front, and he times him shooting a takedown and lands a flying knee and knocks Glover Teixeira out cold to become the new UFC light heavyweight champion. So my pick is the number 2 ranked Yuri BJP or Denisa Prohaska to defeat Glover Teixeira via a second-round flying knee knockout and become the new UFC light heavyweight champion. And you're going to say, why a flying knee? The takedown attempts and also the fact that when you look at Yuri Prohaska's record and look at his wins, he actually has, I believe it's 2 knockouts via flying knee. One over Vladimir Ayas at GCF. Here we go, a flying knee over Radovan Estewin in GCF 23. A flying knee knockout over Martin Solch at GCF 26. A flying knee knockout over Thomas Perez in the first round. Third round for the one against Martin Stolch. And first round, 26 seconds in for the one against Radovan Estewin. Head kicking knees. So he's got, I believe, 3 or 4 flying knee knockouts on his record. I think with the takedown heavy style of Glover Teixeira that he's going to look to employ, he's going to hurt him on the feet, drop him. Glover's going to get back up. He's going to hurt him again, come up the middle, and land that flying knee knockout. All right, that's it for my picks for UFC 275, Teixeira versus Prohaska. You can get this podcast anywhere you get your audio podcast. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Stitcher, Breaker, and many, many more. Each of these fights will be uploaded in an individual video on YouTube. That worked very well for me with the last card, and we're going to continue that trend here. I'm really excited for these fights. Leave a review for the podcast anywhere you can. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can leave a review for the Touch 'Em Up podcast. Do me a favor and let your voice be heard. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, which has fighter breakdowns, interviews, wrestling videos, and everything you could want when you're a mixed martial arts or professional wrestling fan. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Have a good night, everybody, all right?